I'm Kevin.
And I'm Kayla.
We love movies.
And talking about them.
This is the Martini Window. Here we have filmmaker and set dresser, Mr. Josh Bradford. Josh, thank you for coming into the show.
All right, thanks for having me.
Tell us a little about yourself.
I've been working in the film industry for just about 12 years now. Yeah, 12. But lover of movies since as long as I can remember. And in the last short little while, just started making my own little shorts with some friends and trying to break into that world and side of things. So
yeah, and I've seen your short film actually. Love at First Tap, is it? Love at First Tap.
Just Love Tap.
Love Tap. That's what it was. Yeah, no, which, if I'm not mistaken, is currently at the Liftoff Film Festival.
Yeah. We're actually, I think, tomorrow or tonight would be the last, the end of the public vote. And then I believe we're in the top 3 of our program. So if I understand it correctly, it's my first festival. If the top 3 of each program is then viewed by the judges of the event. So yeah, we're doing pretty good. I'm pretty excited about it.
And you should be.
Yeah.
That's
congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Now, Josh here has a series of credits from behind him, including such shows as The Flash, Letterkenny, and the classic film The Witch by Robert Eggers. I know you can't really spill the beans on any of that, but is there anything? I always love asking you about this. I always love asking you about your experience working on The Witch. I know we're going to talk about monsters, but I want to actually just mention this for a sec. I always love your stories about working with Black Phillip.
Yeah, it was a lot. That was one of my first big features. So, at the time I was just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And it was a hard shoot. We were out in the middle of nowhere, in a shooting outside of a small town that the town itself had only like 500 people. And, Black Phillip was full on very angry goat named Charlie who just didn't really care about shooting a movie. So he had his own schedule and his own personality. A lot of those shots of him like rearing up, they're like to the first AD who they created. The two of them had a very combative relationship because obviously the first AD is trying to get the shots that the director wants, and to do that he's riling up the goat. And so anytime the goat was on set, we had to literally hide the first AD until they were ready to do the shots, because otherwise the goat would just go crazy. Yes. Charlie was definitely the star of that movie, and his crazy goat-shaped eyes.
Okay, we are today talking about the 2010 indie classic from Gareth Edwards, Monsters, starring Scoot McNairy and Whitney Able. Josh, you wanted to talk about this movie on this episode, which I was actually really thrilled about. I haven't seen this movie in many years. It was really great being able to rediscover it. What drew you to wanting to bring this up? What made you want to talk about this in this episode?
Well, first of all, I just, don't want to talk about all the movies we normally talk about. So I figured we'd pick one that you and I have never chatted about before. This one was a favorite. This movie came out for me like at a time where I had like a kind of boring job that I did in the morning and didn't really have many other responsibilities. So I was just consuming every movie that I could get my hands on. Yeah. And this was one that for me, like I didn't see it in theaters or anything like that. I had to like scrounge on the internet to try and get some kind of version to watch it. And eventually got it on DVD. But it was just, I loved first of all, the simplicity of it. Like I watched it again last night before this, and just the simplicity of it. I love the story behind it and how it was like 6 people basically just running around shooting it on a prosumer camera. Like that to me, like especially after working in the film industry and seeing how sometimes bogged down it can all be with the minutia of getting the permits and getting everything in order, like the idea of just running around with a group of people in a truck and just shooting stuff.
It's going back to not just mariachi, but like back to even Easy Rider.
Totally. Totally.
Dennis Hopper, and
Yeah, just like, and I think at some points the dialogue wasn't the most crisp, but the idea of just like having bullet points of a story and just shooting a scene around that and then kind of putting it together and editing, it's very the like romantic kind of version of making a movie in my eyes.
And you're not wrong about that, and just the idea too that they if I'm not mistaken, the cast in this movie was pretty much people they met on the street. If I'm not mistaken, like with the exception of your main key people. I mean, you mentioned the dialogue, and that was something that Kayla was actually talking about when we were watching the movie. If there was anything you want to add to that,
Actually, yeah, one thing I really liked about the dialogue is it doesn't matter what they're saying because they visually show the emotional point of the scene later. Like they'll cut halfway in conversations or halfway out of them, and it's more that they're using the words to set the scene for the imagery.
Yeah, and like that makes total sense to me. Like there's I mean, by the way, there's gonna be spoilers abound for the show. I should probably point that out. There's that scene near the end where she goes up to his hotel room just to see that there's another girl in the bed there, right? And what I love about that is that was a good example of you knew everything going on in that sequence was pretty much no dialogue about there's none of this like, oh my god, I fell in love with you and then now this or anything like that. Like you saw completely through Samantha's through her actions and through her visuals to actually see what she's feeling that. And I felt Gareth Edwards did that so well throughout the movie. I mean, I will also always say Gareth Edwards, like he's a visual mastermind, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that he was able to get so much across with such little dialogue, which I'm quite certain was mostly improv.
Yeah. From what I understand, I have the DVD and I meant to watch the special features along with it last night, but I just didn't have the time. But if I remember correctly, he didn't have a full script. He just had ideas and basic like scenes of ideas. Like I need them to talk to somebody about crossing a border. So and like lose a ring, right? And that was kind of just like one of the aspects. In this scene, you've lost the ring you lost the money and now you got to barter with the ring. That's what it was. And again, like the whole like putting most of the signs and all that stuff in digitally after the fact means you could just shoot literally anything on a wall and just put it in later. So it's just not always the best way, but it just worked so well in this particular movie and gave it a really like interesting vibe, I felt.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry.
No, go on.
It's funny that you mentioned the ring. What I really liked about the scene with the ring is she's clearly wearing a very expensive necklace as well. And the first thing she takes off is her engagement ring.
Yeah, totally.
Like she cares less about that than anything else she has on.
Yeah, just wants to get rid of it as soon as possible. I think the other thing that was really smart about this was hiring an actual, like those two were an actual couple. And I think that really you could really feel the chemistry the whole time. It was like palpable. So I really think that was just smart movie making.
I actually agree with that completely. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a completely different movie to think about, but it actually kind of reminds me of a lot of the stuff behind The Amazing Spider-Man, the Andrew Garfield one. There's a lot of hype with that. And, while people always have their opinions on which Spider-Man movies are the best, one thing that I think anybody could agree with is that the chemistry between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield was just coming right off the screen, right? Yeah. And I think you see that a lot of the time when you see couples like this, and clearly these two, I don't know if there's still a thing, Scoot McNairy and Whitney Able, but I mean, at the time that they were making this movie, it's like you're saying, you can feel the chemistry coming off of them like crazy the whole time.
Yeah.
And that really helps aid the narrative, what we're trying to be set to believe here, right?
Totally. It definitely, it helped with his whole, I think, show, don't tell, kind of mentality with that movie. And I think most of his in general, like, I don't think there's one of his movies that I would say kind of beat you over the head with exposition. It's much more just like, here it is. And the audience kind of figures it out.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go on.
What I really liked about the movie is if anyone else made a movie set in this world, they would be with the military guys or the people who know what's going on and have all the weapons. But I liked that it was just monsters have been in this world for so long, and it felt more like a travel doc, or
Yeah.
it was just it was such a realistic take on how this world would be, and I haven't seen that in other monster movies. It was almost like an antithesis of
It's actually kind of funny too. And I was saying to Kayla when we were watching this, it's kind of interesting because when you consider that everything Kayla is saying about monsters is totally correct, which is so funny when you consider the next movie that he made was freaking Godzilla.
And yeah, and I think I remember when that movie came out, and people who hadn't seen monsters were annoyed that you didn't see a lot of Godzilla fighting, or you got like just glimpses of it. But having seen this movie, that's exactly what I expected. Like, I remember in that first Godzilla, there's like a scene where Godzilla and the Muto are just starting to fight, and I think
and the doors close. All the
And I remember just thinking that is absolutely Gareth Edwards to a T. We'll see the after effects of the fight, but we're not going to see the actual fight.
Yeah, I mean, Gareth Edwards has such a sense of scale. It's unbelievable. And you see that in Monsters as well, in a scene that I totally forgot how fantastic it was. When they're being guided through, you got all your Sherpas, you got all your, like, I'm going to call them Sherpas. That's basically what they are. You got all your Sherpas, your armed guards, and all that to take them through the infected zone. And it's like what Kayla's saying, any other movie, this is the military, this is what have you. What I love about it is, like, it's that classic scene where they're in the car and you've had maybe 1-2 scenes with the armed guards, and all of them get killed.
Right. Yeah, totally.
But to shoot that entire sequence from within the car as a oneer was such a smart choice. And
yeah, totally.
Oh, you're about to say something?
Well, as I was watching it last night, I just, was thinking, you're not getting anything more than just a scary look from him, a scary look from her, and then just a POV out of the car from inside, right? And it's great. Obviously, you have to then add in all the effects and sound effects and all that. But as far as on the day shooting, like, it's crazy how simple it was, and it's so good.
I mean, it only is that good though because Gareth Edwards had such a history in visual effects.
Totally.
Like, he did all the effects. He did all the VFX himself in his bedroom. And I'm going to tell you, man, when I was younger and I was a much more naive filmmaker, I saw Monsters and thought, that's it. Anybody can do a sci-fi movie now. Anybody can do it. He used After Effects. I have After Effects. That makes us the same. Yeah, it's like, absolutely. You know what I mean? When in reality, it's like, it's like, don't even say those two things in the same sentence.
Yeah, I think around maybe a little bit later, maybe 2012. So a couple years after the movie came out, I like dabbled in Blender and learning 3D modeling and stuff. Yeah, that alone, not even just the After Effects part of it, but just the modeling of characters and all that kind of the monsters that they create. Yeah. Like, it's crazy that he did that on his own. I think I read it was like 250 shots.
Yeah, 250 shots, and it was 2 months before he got to any of the creature shots.
Yeah, that's insane. And they look great. Like that scene at the end with the two kind of dancing.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Like, those colors just look so cool, and yeah, great.
They also kind of remind me of like Alien, just the way that the creatures are structurally designed.
Totally.
Like when you first see them, and like I love the strange stilted way that the tentacles move.
Yeah.
It's almost like feels like it's slowed down animation frames to like.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely with you on that. I feel the Geiger influence definitely can't be underscored on that. The H.R. Geiger influence on the monsters, especially like what you're saying. I liked the design of the monsters too, and that I liked the design that they were very okay, so like 2010 after Cloverfield, there was this big trend. I don't know if anybody remembers, the Muto monster did the same thing. But it was this big trend of having long front legs that were going down, and like and then the fangs up top. Like, the Cloverfield monster basically influenced a lot of monster design going for the next 10 years. And so I thought it was really interesting at the time that this movie came out to see it more influenced by something along the lines of like War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
They looked go on.
Yeah, I think he originally, because again, I was looking some stuff up. I think he was looking to do a movie kind of similar vibe to War of the Worlds before War of the Worlds came out, the remake there by Spielberg. And so when that came out, he kind of abandoned that. And then I think he then thought of a found footage type movie, which, Cloverfield ended up being. And so he moved on to what ended up being Monsters. And it's just also a good, good thing to remember as young filmmakers. But, just you see something that, you thought that was an idea you might have had, just keep rolling and kind of morph it into something else.
I mean, that's always a big thing, right? Like everything's a remake of a remake of a remake, or remix of a remix of a
Nothing's
remix.
original anymore.
Nothing's original. And I remember back in 09, and which is, it's kind of relevant. That's when this movie came out, roughly 2010. But I remember back in 09 when Avatar came out, and everybody and their dog thought they had the most original opinion in the world of, it's just Ferngully in space, it's just Pocahontas in space, it's all that. And I, first off, I know people to this day who will say, I can't believe you like those movies. The story is blah, blah, blah. And I always say, well, you pay to see how many Fast and the Furious movies, which I enjoy. But if we're going to talk about story, absolutely. Those movies absolutely, they absolutely cater to what a certain demographic wants. But it's like, if you're talking about story, but
the second Avatar was about family. So.
That's true. The second Avatar was about family. But it was the same thing as that era. So what I found is it was of this random opinion where, around the man, I don't even know where I was going with this now. I don't even remember where I was actually going with that at this moment. I had a whole train of thought, and it's gone away. But I want to actually do say something though about the VFX in this, because the VFX is pretty revolutionary, I think, in a lot of ways. It actually also showed a lot of what people could do at that indie budget, right? Now, have you heard of this thing called Wonder Studio?
I don't believe I have.
It's is a bit of a pivot here a little, but it's sort of related. It's Ty Sheridan, the actor, created this thing called Wonder Studio, and what it's doing is it allows motion capture with no tracking dots, with nothing. And his whole mindset is he wants to take blockbuster visual effects and put it in the hands of a film student.
Interesting.
That's the whole mindset of it. I'm actually a beta tester on this, and it's a lot of fun. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's been interesting. But now I look back at what Gareth Edwards was doing at that time, and at that time, it's like you're saying, you can shoot anywhere. You can add science to anything, right? You can add a digital signage anywhere. I'm thinking what do you think Gareth Edwards could have done had he been able to actually make that movie in 2023?
Totally. If that movie was made now on that budget, I think, it would be. I also think it would be just a different movie in general. I think with the MCU kind of big blockbuster movies, I loved that movie last night as I rewatched it. It's slow. I love a slow burn movie. Alien, I prefer the original Alien to Aliens. I love that quiet, slow burn.
I'm actually with you on that. I love Aliens, but Alien is
totally.
I'm
that's my movie of choice. So I think if Monsters is made today, I think you'd probably be more with the military. I don't even think it would be a war photographer type feel to it. I think you'd see more of the monsters as well. I think there'd be less sounds.
I don't think you'd have a producer nowadays giving that budget and saying, "Wait, we're not even going to get to see the monsters."
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I don't think anyone's letting you get away with that now.
And even then, the budget was less than $500,000. So it's just. I just think movies feel different. I think for me, 20, maybe 08 to 2012 were for me, in the golden era of sci-fi, and just not even just sci-fi, but just smaller movies that now I feel like you don't get as much. Everything is just a Netflix original or whatever. And maybe that's because I'm working more and don't have the time to consume the smaller indies anymore. But
that's right, Josh. It's your fault.
It's all my fault. But yeah, I just feel like movies don't feel this way anymore to me. You might get the occasional one here or there. And you know what? With Gareth Edwards' new movie coming out, I'm hopeful that we'll get something in that feel.
In my opinion, he's 3 for 3 so far. So
I'm actually gonna pivot back to something you said, Josh, about how it's like a slower movie. I actually really love that about the movie because I find like even my brain now, I'm seeing more like, there's a lot of Marvel stuff in theaters, and I'm a nerd. I grew up like watching the 1994 X-Men cartoon kind of thing.
Totally.
So, I'm so happy that we can have this nerd stuff on the big screen because I felt like a pipe dream when I was a kid.
Including a new season of that X-Men series. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having so much of it has definitely changed the way I think people watch movies, and even I watch movies. I have to like actively put slower movies on to stop my brain like expecting everything to be like fast paced and loud and bright, because like it's kind of like it feels a little bit like an assault on your senses in a good way, but when that's all that you watch, like it can just be sometimes like I found other movies, I'm like I don't remember it being that slow, and I'm like, wait, no, just the way I watch movies has changed.
I mean, I think a prime example of that is when Blade Runner 2049 came out.
Did people not watch the original Blade Runner? It wasn't an action movie.
Everybody was watching this thinking it was some sort of freaking action film. Like, have you never seen the original Blade? It's a slow burn noir.
Yeah.
But it's I don't understand when people kind of like they kind of have that retroactive kind of memory editing in their head. I do want to say though, like you are right about these slow burn movies and kind of the assault on senses. Like Josh, what you're referring to with Netflix, Quentin Tarantino actually recently said something to this note on his podcast. He was talking about how we've had 3 Ryan Reynolds movies in the last like 2 years of $200 million budgets. That he made a good point. He's like 10 years ago, if you had Gal Gadot, Gal Gadot at her level of fame nowadays, if you had Gal Gadot, Dwayne Johnson, and Ryan Reynolds in a $200 million action film 10 years ago, that would have been number 1 at the box office for like a month straight. It would have been the summer movie for every high school student. It would have been, you know what I mean? And nowadays, that just happened with Red Notice, and it came and went in a weekend.
Yeah, and I didn't see it. I think I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I mean and if that doesn't exactly prove what we're kind of talking about, right?
Exactly, totally.
I did watch it. It was fun, but that's like it was a fun action movie.
I think I watched the first bit of it, and I remember thinking for 200,000 or for 200 million.
200,000, that'd be great.
Yeah, for 200 million, I was just expecting slightly more.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. There's the fact that we can pump. There's machine that can put movies out to people to watch like that is amazing to me. I still think it is, but I think we've hit a point where quality over quantity and quantity over quality is definitely, we need to take a look at that. And
well, I mean, you're even hearing people like Bob Iger say that now, right? Because he's going on, he's doing the whole thing where Disney's going to be focusing on quality over quantity. And I mean, in his opinion, quality means they're focusing only on Marvel and Star Wars, but take that as you will. But he is talking about not releasing so many Marvel shows at once, and so many Marvel movies. And I'm an admitted Marvel stan. I watch all of them, right? I'm totally okay saying that. But fact matter is, it does get a little exhausting, especially when you are trying to follow this whole story. And there's like 5 shows in a year to watch, or there's 3 movies you guys see. Like, we didn't see Black Panther: Wakanda Forever until it was on Disney Plus, just because we ran out of time.
They're kind of running into, I know we've pivoted from the topic of monsters, but I feel that
it's all relative.
But with the Marvel movies now, I'm running into the same problem that I ran into years ago when there were comics, because I was collecting like the new X-Men run, and then they had this big crossover event, and I realized I had to buy 5 other runs of comics just to know what was going on, because they had all of these teams, and they didn't even like give you a thing at the beginning where they're like, previously on these things, this is what you need to know to read this comic. They just expected you to go buy them.
Totally.
And it was like,
I'm just kind of getting back out of the comic game just because of that. It's just too hard to keep going with everything. The pocketbook is just hurting in these days. So, the wants have to take a little bit of a backseat for a bit. And yeah, I 100% agree. I was just gonna say everything's getting bigger, and we can make a franchise out of anything, including this movie, because I never saw it, but there was a sequel to this.
Yes, there was. Monsters Dark Continent. Gareth Edwards has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing maybe a poster for it, and if I'm not mistaken, was it not more geared around military side?
It is actually the sort of movie that we're celebrating monsters for not being.
Right.
But I will say though, and that sounds more negative than it is, the movie itself is actually quite fun. Don't go into it expecting human relations. Don't go into it expecting this like kind of quiet. I quiet film like this. I would say actually, this would make a great double feature with A Quiet Place. Monsters. I could absolutely see that. But yeah, Monsters Dark Continent. I did watch that movie actually. I didn't see it in theaters, but I did see it. At the time, I was really into one of the actors, Joe Dempsey. He went on to play Gendry on Game of Thrones.
Right.
I remembered him from a show called Skins back in the 2000s. He was good in the movie, but it's just like that. Like it was they did make a franchise of it. And I think they even talked about an additional installment at one point, but Dark Continent, I don't think it did anything close to what they wanted. Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because it kind of falls to what we're talking about too when we brought up like Red Notice, stuff like that. Like one thing I want to say is that one thing I loved is that he didn't try, like you're saying, he didn't try to go for things outside of his means in this movie, so that we have that big climactic action sequence of the monster eating up everybody, super suspenseful, but it's all from within a car, and I love that. Like recently we went to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark on its re-release, right? We saw Raiders the other night at the theater, and I'm just watching this movie again. I've watched Raiders probably 100 times, but just watching how clean the action is to follow and how the pacing, it's like there's action sequences, but it doesn't have to hit you over the head every split second, right?
Yeah.
Even some of the most high paced scenes in that movie, like when the Jeep is falling around and Indy's kind of crawling underneath the Jeep and punching the guys out of the seat. Such a great, incredible. But when you actually watch that movie in your head, you might think of it like it's a Fast and the Furious level speed and all that, but they're driving at like maybe 35 kilometers an hour the whole time. It's very slow, but you're following the action and they're making sure that every movement he has stakes. That's what you need. You don't need the assault of the senses, and Monsters remembered that. Everything in that movie had stakes. The moment they were going into the infected zone, right from the get-go, you knew what was at stake here. The world's not going to end, but they could both die. We now know that. Literally, all the officials are telling you can die from this. The guys who are supposed to stop you from dying just fucking died from this. And so the stakes are clear and present. And what I love about this too is the character of my God, I'm so sorry, but Samantha and the other character's name is Andrew Calder, right? So everyone just called him Calder, I remember. So Samantha and Calder, like the idea of Calder being this almost like Nightcrawler-esque character, the idea that blood and guts gets me paid, and I just love that mindset. It's a perfect small motivation in a world like that, and I thought Scoot McNairy just played that role perfectly.
His line about doctors was hilarious.
Oh my God, that killed me.
Yeah. Again, their banter, right? It's just, you can tell that the chemistry was there, right?
Yeah.
So good. I loved the scenes of them walking through like the kind of party at night, just having fun, and all that stuff.
Yeah, and all that was perfect. And what I loved about watching that was, I've been to Mexico a few times, and I'm watching, I was like, they're literally just at a Mexican flea market right now.
Yep.
Like, they're at a Mexican flea market with no permits.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get a shot of a blank wall and put in some kind of mural about an alien attack, and you're in a not post-apocalyptic, but a sci-fi. I
mean, personally, I would call it post-apocalyptic. I mean, aliens literally just attacked the world. We have there's an entire section of North America that you're not supposed to walk in. Like,
yeah. So. And it's just, again, that just simplicity of it, right? Like, just go get random shots, and we'll figure out how to make the movie after that.
And you are right. Like, we really don't see those sorts of things anymore. I mean, I directed. I have a feature film coming out in July, and actually, when this episode comes out, my feature will be out. Like, I think the day later. a day later on
That's
July.
crazy. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna do a self plug there. Girl Gone Bad, originally called Guiltless. Girl Gone Bad will be out July 11th and July 17th on Amazon and Tubi. So with that though, what I want to say is like our budget for that was quite minimal. I'm not going to announce our budget on recording here, but what I will say is that seeing what Gareth Edwards had to do and what he actually, if I'm being 100% honest, got to do was really cool. And I always thought about my first feature being this thing where I thought it was going to be the Easy Rider type situation, where I thought it was going to be like 2 or 3 people, we hop in a van and do something on the road. And then I got to be honest with you, I don't think regulations allow for that nowadays. And at the same time, it turned out trying to get people inside of a house alone was already hard enough. So I looked at these things. I think about the logistics of what they do to get around this and how they even manage to keep their people for so long. And, you know, it's like just now knowing, being through that ringer. And I mean, you've done a couple short films now on your own right. So you have an idea yourself about like trying to keep these things together, right?
Try to keep them together. And you know what? Honestly, the hardest part I found about the whole process has been finding locations and getting access. Like we had in my second short, which hasn't come out yet, in the script, a bookstore. And the way I had it planned would be like no more than, 2 shots, because it's kind of montagey. So it would be like, just a wide and a tight, very quick. There's no dialogue. All the dialogue at this point in the script was voiceover, so it was like we can record everything after. It's just we need 2 quick shots in a bookstore. And we went to I don't know how many bookstores, like straight up bookstores, comic book stores, basically anything that had an aisle of books in it. And they were like, yeah, no, you're not. Oh, you're a micro budget? No, absolutely not. We even looked into a public library, which has a whole thing about photography on public ground and it being okay as long as you're not disrupting what's happening and you're a small enough production, right? So when I emailed them about it, they emailed back, yes, you can do it, but you have to rent a liaison, which is like $50 an hour, and you can only do it at night, and the deposit on it is like, $5,000 or something like that. And I was like, did you miss the part of the email where I said micro budgets, like mighty micro budget?
Not public like library. Small, I'm public.
Small budget, micro budget. So that again, that idea of just 6 people with a small enough camera and not even lights, just shoot and you get what you get. That to me is it's the romantic movie making idea for me.
I mean, what was the old Dennis Hopper quote from Easy Rider? God is the world's best gaffer.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, it's also kind of like what Roger Corman does. He doesn't do the same kind of movies, but like Death Race 2050, everyone is wearing swimming goggles instead of VR goggles, and like you're just expected to go with it.
Absolutely.
I also just want to take a moment to point out here, I find this so funny. So Death Race 2050 is one of Kayla's favorite movies. And what I love is that she manages to throw this thing into conversations so often. And I love that she found a way to introduce this. I love how you found a way to introduce the sequel to Death Race 2000 into a conversation about monsters, but I condone what you just did. That's hilarious. It's a fun movie, I will say that. Yeah, Death Race 2050.
I could go on about it forever, so I'm not going to talk more about it. It'll be a separate thing where we just talk about like.
I can't stress this enough, everybody. Anybody listening to this isn't the Jason Statham Death Race. This is not Death Race 2000 from the 70s. This is the Roger Corman produced sequel to Death Race 2000 that came out in 2015.
You've got 2 women discussing men at a place called Bechdel's Bar.
Well, literally failing the Bechdel test. Oh my God. Hilarious. Yeah, and so exactly what you're saying though, like it's a lot harder, I think, than people realize when they think about how these people went out and they made, I've mentioned a few times that they made Easy Rider, they made El Mariachi. I got Rebel Without a Crew right next to my desk here from Robert Rodriguez. I've read it, 3-4 times. But the fact of the matter is, to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's actually gone out and done that on the road. At least when, you know, you made your feature, or not, you made your shorts and I made my feature, we have controllable environments, you know what I mean? Like controlled instances. But if we're just going to take like 6 people, hey, you guys want to head over to Mexico for like 2 months and shoot a bunch of stuff and maybe have a movie at the end? You know, it's, you got to really question how, but I mean, with a $500,000 budget, they were certainly paid.
So. Exactly. And they definitely had, because I looked it up, I think they shot over 3 weeks, but they went to like 4.
Oh my God, I was way off my estimate then.
Yeah, they went to 4 or 5 different countries. So they definitely had like a crew, you know, production crew getting them where they needed to go. But the actual on the ground shooting crew was just 6 people. But
okay, yeah. So
Belize, some help that we don't get.
Yeah, Belize, Mexico, Guatemala, Costa Rica, the United States over 3 weeks. Holy hell!
Yeah, that's an insane schedule. I'm talking about 6-day weeks right now on a 3-week schedule. That's 4 or 5 different countries in the same amount of time. That's a bananas. Yeah. And by the end of it, they had over 100 hours of footage. And
4-hour first cut.
Yeah, to a 90-minute, which is insane. I'd love to see that 4-hour, maybe not the full 4-hour, but I was
gonna say, is it historically, when does a 4-hour cut improve something?
Yeah, that's true. But like,
actually, a
2-hour cut, that would be cool.
Yeah, I'll argue Zack Snyder's Justice League did improve.
I'm gonna keep my voice to myself on that one. I will say that the 3-hour plus extended editions of Lord of the Rings, those are the preferred versions for my watching. So longer sometimes is better.
That's fair. No, I mean the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, I think, make that argument.
Absolutely.
Well. Yeah, I think that. Oh, actually, you know what? Not 4 hours, but Once Upon a Time in America. The extended cut of that actually makes it a coherent movie. Right. Not just coherent. It goes from being, the laughingstock of Sergio Leone's career to being arguably his masterpiece.
And again, not a long cut, but the directors of like a couple of different Ridley Scott movies are all better than the theatrical cuts. So
I mean, I don't think anyone ever argues. Ridley Scott seems to be one of the main people who knows what's up with director's cuts.
Yeah, I love his director's cuts. Kingdom of Heaven is so good.
Kingdom of Heaven's a remarkable one too, because that greatly changes how that movie comes across.
It's a completely different movie. Like it's entirely different.
It's an entirely different movie, and people have argued too that goes from being one of his weakest films to potentially being one of his best, all after a cut. And like people argue about the director's cut of Alien. That's one of the. I mean, we talked about Alien earlier. That maybe I prefer the original for Alien, but for the most part, though, Ridley Scott's pretty incredible. Yeah, like for director's cuts.
I mean, I think both of those are fine. I'm good with either, because the director's cut of that one really just has a couple of longer shots. Really, if I'm right, there's not really like full scenes. It's just a couple of longer. More extended dread and drawn out slowness. My favorite.
And don't get me even started on the final cut of Blade Runner. Like that's a night and day difference from the theatrical cut. One thing I was talking to Gail is that this movie came out in 2010, and I find, considering the budget is $500K, and this is also where I go back to saying like, him being a VFX artist for so long was very clearly a reason why this is able to work the way it did. It's like the movie came out 13 years ago now, and I think you're just now starting to see the cracks in the CGI, which is astonishing. Considering the budget and considering it's a one-man VFX team.
Last night was the first time I think I'd watched it in probably 8 or 9 years, maybe not since it came out. I've definitely seen it since, but yeah, I remember watching it at the time and being like, that is amazing. And last night I was like, oh yeah, okay, it's not amazing, but it's amazing for what he was, and one dude in his bedroom. It's astounding.
I would argue that quality in 2010 computing power is amazing.
Oh, at the time, it was absolutely. Again, it blew me away. I just remember thinking, one dude did this alone. How am I not doing that? What am I doing wrong?
And he really, like, with the way it was made, he really populated the world with the VFX. Like, one thing I really loved about the movie was like, even like the helicopter that was crashed on the side of the road. Yeah. And just he adds so many things and like so much destruction of to really feel like it's a lived-in world where monsters have already been here.
Yeah.
I am an absolute sucker for world building. Even if a movie is not original or good, if it's got even half decent world building, I'm almost always sucked into it.
I mean, you're a dungeon master. It makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of lore or history about what's going on in the past, and ooh, that's my bread and butter. So, and I love that. I love the little news segments, and like at one point you see like a children's educational video on like putting on the masks when the aliens are near.
Yeah.
Like just that kind of world building just is what, you know, tickles my fancy. I love it.
Yeah, the gas masks all over the place. It's a little interesting seeing that post-pandemic.
Also, the wall. The wall was pretty funny. I remember last night I had to convince my girlfriend to watch it with me, and I was like, you know, they build a wall to keep the aliens out. And she's like, did this movie come out in 2016? Like, what the hell? So yeah, there were definitely some weird like future predictions almost, or not future predictions, but just creepy coincidences maybe.
Well, I mean, I feel like the wall thing though, like the wall's there, but I mean, a wall in general has been a symbolism for divide forever, right down to like Pink Floyd. Totally. You know, it not even just that, going back to the days of King Kong. Like you know, the big reveal of something bigger, the last barrier, that's always been, I think, in my mind, the wall's been representative of that as a narrative piece or literature piece for a really long time. I mean, Kayla, you read way more books than I do. I'm assuming that you probably kind of know what I'm talking about here.
I mean, even like look at history. There's like the Berlin Wall, like,
and it's always representative of like big, yeah.
Well, like even Game of Thrones, they have like the wall in that to stop the Ice Walkers from getting in.
Yeah, I mean, I did feel that obviously the comparison with the border wall thing is obviously the most apt comparison. But I mean, I also don't know if it is though, because in the case of monsters, they're literally trying to keep out actual like vicious, man-hungry things, like things that are going to eat you.
You could argue though that, you know, there are some people in the States that view
that's
that way.
So, yeah. They wrongfully view them that way.
Totally. No, absolutely. You can't deny, similar to, I think, like District 9, right? There's that undertone of, yes, we're talking about aliens, but we're talking about real life at the same
District 9 is a very different comparison than monsters. So in District 9, the prawns were the ones being subjugated.
Sure. But again, I think that whole, like, you know, the whole wall being built to keep out the things that they don't want in, the smuggling of people across the border, you know, the similarities are definitely there. I don't think it's the point of the movie by any means to shed a light on that kind of thing.
No.
But I think it definitely used, you know, I think that's the best part about sci-fi, right? Is you take a future kind of technology or aspect or whatever and use it to shine a light on things that are going on currently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Star Trek fan personally, and one show that Kayla and I really enjoy is Star Trek: Strange New Worlds.
So good.
But it makes me think of that first episode, actually, the show where he starts explaining how I think they were using footage from the frickin' Capitol riot for it. Right. But it's like he was explaining how that divide, that civil distress turned into the Second Civil War, which then became the Eugenics War, then World War III, and it's like. And to actually hear him describe that and how that goes to be, plus a really nice Eugenics War name drop there when he was doing it. But you start to see that, and it's exactly that. They're using actual civil unrest that's existing today in today's society with using actual footage of it, no less, to try to paint the plot of how this escalates into something that we've seen too many times in history. And it's only going to get worse each time. I love that about sci-fi, and I love what, and you see a lot of this sort of commentary I find in Gareth Edwards' movie here, Monsters. You know, the idea alone that the world failed at trying to help the people in this world where they've had this completely unknown invader, I'm going to call it, with the aliens there, and with characters like Calder, it's like, yeah, I love the fact I mentioned it earlier. I love the fact that we have these like kind of greasy night crawlers in. And by the way, if anybody's listening, I'm using the term night crawler in reference to the incredible Jake Gyllenhaal movie. But yeah, you're seeing these kind of greasy nightcrawlers, and even the situation with Samantha there. Like, I love how the storyline here is just such a simple, you need to get her from point A to point B, and it is a process of seeing this. You're seeing all of the destruction and all of the kind of ways society has collapsed and how the government's failed and how they can take $5,000 for your ticket one day and the next day it's like it never happened. You know what I mean? Like, and they're doing this in the middle of like a global catastrophe. And I love the commentary that comes with that. And it was so much nicer than just seeing another movie, which, not that I'm opposed to these, but just seeing another movie of, a monster, wreaking havoc, which of course I'm always down for. I'm writing a movie like that right now.
This is the movie. This movie takes place after that movie. This is the aliens are here. Everybody knows about them. It's common knowledge. They're making children's educational videos about them. It's cool.
Yeah, it's not about the monster. It's about the people around the monster. And I mean, of course, the name of the movie is Monsters, and you almost expect it's gonna have this whole like humans are the real monsters kind of mindset to it, which I'm actually glad they didn't go with that.
Yes, no. The closest I'd say they got to that was like him maybe taking the photo of the dead girl and looking for catastrophe, but I agree, it didn't lean into that at all.
Yeah. And yeah, sorry, Kaylee said something.
So one thing that I found actually like made me more fearful, and not in a way of like, oh, I'm scared that this character's life is in immediate danger, is the fact that they were having like visa troubles and stuff like that. Like, it's a very human experience, and it's, again, they're not the military guys. They can't just travel somewhere and run away from it. Like, they're gonna get stopped at the border. She doesn't have her passport anymore.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, I love the like progression of them traveling too, where it's like they travel with the guy in the truck for a little bit, and that's nice, and then they get on a boat, and that's kind of sketchy, and then they get with the guys with the guns, and then it's real sketchy, then that progression of like, we're going someplace not fun.
Yeah. Also, why is there even an industry for this? It seems like even the people who help you cross the infected lands don't even want to be doing this job. Like, why do we not just ban people from crossing these lands?
Well, I think that's the, at least I got from that's they're trying. That's the whole point. But those guys were backdoor kind of sketchy people. Yeah. Like, what's the coyotes, I think is the word for people who get people across the borders. Coyotes.
Is that what they're called, eh?
I believe so. I don't know in this world they're ever referred to that, but yeah, I got that kind of feel of like, we're doing illegal stuff to get you across the border, but they're
right. Yeah.
They don't care.
Yeah, because it was like $10,000, and part of it was like, because they're saying part of it's like bribing officials and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I also, I kind of love, something about this movie I just really love is how the linchpin to the whole thing about why they had to go to the infected lands and everything like that was simply because Calder got laid.
Yeah. And got robbed.
If he didn't get laid, if he didn't sleep with that woman, nothing would have happened for the rest of the movie. They would have been totally fine.
And a very organic bump in the road. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I like that. It's simple. You can see it happening to almost anybody in that kind of situation. You get drunk, you hook up with some random person, and you come back and your stuff's stolen.
Yeah. Actually, for the longest time in the movie, Kayla and I were under the impression that he didn't have a place to stay whatsoever, because it was a constant like, oh yeah, the heater's broken in my room, and then he falls asleep in the room, or it's like, oh, my room's not ready, so he falls asleep in the bed, and we just kind of assumed. Until that moment, we just kind of assumed that he didn't have a place to stay, and that he was kind of like just avoiding that fact or something.
Right. Yeah, well, there's that. I think his character at that point was just floating from like crap shithole hotel to shithole hotel. Yeah. So when he saw that like her room was obviously nicer, and you could tell that they had a connection. He could tell that there was a connection. Tried to swing his shot and missed. And
she got rid of her engagement ring. I mean, if he just. You wait a little bit longer.
Eventually, obviously, obviously, I think, yeah, they had the connection. Obviously, at the end they kissed, but at that point in the movie, when they were partying and drinking, and he tried to stay in her room, I think she was just like, "No, we're friends. It's all good." She was interested, I think. At that, you could tell she was interested because the next morning she asked him out for coffee, and then it's upset when she sees him with the other woman.
Well, it's so funny too because I remember that scene came up. The first thing I said is like, "You're supposed to feel sympathetic for her at the moment." And I actually looked at Kayla and I was like, "He has absolutely nothing to be ashamed about here." It's like he went out, he tried to go after her. She, she's engaged, and she turned it down. He did not persist.
I would argue, other than the fact that they both could tell that there was a connection, and she was not doing it because she was engaged and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
despite knowing that there was like that whole scene in the flea market, like the chemistry off those two is just radiating.
Yeah.
I love that. I think those scenes are great. I love the scene, how it like they progress into that kind of memorial, which was obviously just a memorial that they can then twist to make it into a memorial about aliens. So it's just very clever, just clever filmmaking and what you shoot, and then with the context of what you've already shot, what it puts into perspective. It's just so smart.
I'm trying to think about what other movies since then have kind of come closest, because you are right. Like, you don't see movies like this anymore.
No.
The last one I could think of that kind of runs that way is Tangerine.
I was just thinking that because that one was the script where they got it like as it was going, right?
Yeah.
Is that the one you think? Yes. Yeah, I would agree. That was the one
all shot on the iPhone. Yeah.
Yeah. They did it.
Fantastic movie, by the way.
I love it. Yeah, that was a good one. But there was a TV show on Amazon. I can't remember what it was called. I didn't watch it. We meant to watch it. We just never got around to it. But James McAvoy is in it. And I believe it's similar, where I believe the story is his daughter has been kidnapped or is missing or something. And basically he's just put in a situation and he reacts naturally to it. Like, I don't know if this happens in the show because I haven't seen it, but I assume what would happen is like, okay, you go in this room with a bunch of police detectives and they'll just set a scene. And then another detective walks in 10 minutes in and tells you that they found the body of your daughter, and you just react to that, I think that's kind of how that show went. So I'd be interested to check that out to see if it's got a similar kind of vibe to it.
Like the way it's shot and all that.
Yeah, and just that kind of free, almost improv-y kind of feel to it that I think you could feel a lot in the dialogue in this sometimes, that it was improv-y and not all the actors were actors.
You kind of got, it's so funny actually, just thinking about this in this conversation, you kind of got me wanting to find some more of these sorts of movies. Like, I might rewatch Easy Rider sometime soon. But the other one that makes me think of is, I don't know if you ever saw this, a 2011 Michael Cera movie called, or 2013, I want to say, Michael Cera movie called Crystal Fairy and the Magic Cactus. It was check it out. That's a great movie. It's like, it was after the kind of Youth in Revolt, Scott Pilgrim era of Michael Cera. He was trying to reinvent himself afterwards. Mm-hmm. And he actually did some fascinating work in that time that not enough people have seen. But this one though, Crystal Fairy and the Magic Cactus, very similar in that sense. A bunch of people in a car, they shot it across a desert in Nevada. Excellent movie. I highly recommend it. But if we're talking about movies that kind of did exactly that, the Easy Rider, the Monsters style, just pack it all in, go shoot. Mm-hmm. That's another one to think about. But I mean, the fact that the only other movie I think I can really think of right now is Tangerine is kind of telling, and that's just in LA. Right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other ones too. I feel like if you'd asked me this question back in 2010 when Monster came out, I could give you like a list of them. And now I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know, man. Do you know how many movies have come out since then?
Yeah, any movies. I don't think any movies have come out since 2010.
Not at all, actually.
No, not any. But it's hard, right? Because most movies aren't made that way. That's why.
And I mean, the thing is too is that there probably are plenty of these movies, but you are right. Like nowadays, like I'll bet you anything. If you go to YouTube right now, you could probably find full feature length movies that were made for $300 in the back of your car, right? And
What?
you know,
Yeah.
so they are
Has a quality. I would say this has a quality though that those movies don't, obviously, because it got, we're
yes,
talking about it today, right?
100%, 100%. What I'm also saying though is I'm kind of curious if the virtual nature of all the streaming nature of things like YouTube, I love YouTube. YouTube's great, but when something's called the YouTube original or it's direct to YouTube, that comes with a stigma,
Totally.
right?
Absolutely.
And absolutely, because anybody can upload to YouTube, which is great. That's great for artists. But if we're talking about movies that are going to have that sort of impact, it doesn't really have the same. Which, there might be a bunch of road trip type movies or movies that are made with nothing but passion and all that, which is great. But I'm curious now if they're even going to have the same effect that Monsters had as well, like you're saying. Because Monsters, when that movie came out, you can only the highest. I think when that movie came out, YouTube only allowed up to like 20-minute videos or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a new movie though. The creator looks fantastic.
It does. I've only actually seen one trailer for it, and I only watched it once, so I have very limited knowledge about it, and I'm actually really excited for that. What I saw looks amazing. So I'm super excited for that one.
All right. Well, Josh, anything you'd like to add before we start to wrap things up here?
Thanks for having me. I guess I'll do a little bit of a self plug myself. We're Hyphenate Productions on Vimeo or Instagram. Hyphenate_productions on Instagram. Don't have a lot posted yet because we're still just baby fresh and new, but check us out.
We'll put a link.
Yeah, we'll spot you the link on our
awesome
video
Thank you.
on podcast. No problem. We are going to if you are listening to this on Spotify, YouTube, Deezer, whatever our other avenues are right now, in our description, please look if you can. We have Blu-rays, links for Blu-rays for Monsters, and we got a link to Josh Bradford's Hyphenate Productions. Josh, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you for having me. It was super fun.
All right. Cheers.